The day she sent me away, the city looked brighter than usual. Sunlight reflected off the glass towers of downtown like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. Cars moved smoothly along the wide roads, people laughed in cafes, and somewhere nearby, music played from a passing car. But inside my chest, everything felt cold. I stood outside the tall iron gates of the Lin family mansion, holding a single suitcase in my hand. It wasn't heavy. I didn't own much anyway. 7 years of loyalty. 7 years of silent effort. And everything I had fit inside one suitcase. The gate opened slowly with a mechanical hum. A maid stepped out first, followed by her. Clara Lin. The woman I had loved for most of my adult life. She walked toward me with the same graceful steps I had memorized years ago. Her long brown hair rested neatly over her shoulders, and her expression remained calm, too calm. Not sad. Not regretful. Just distant. Like I was already someone from her past. "You came quickly," she said. Her voice sounded neutral, almost professional. Not the warm tone she used to speak with me. I forced a small smile. "You said it was important." She nodded once, then crossed her arms lightly. Behind her, I noticed another figure standing near the mansion steps. Tall, well-dressed, confident. Ethan Walker. I recognized him instantly. Everyone did. He was the son of one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city, someone powerful enough to change destinies with a single decision. And judging by the way he stood beside her, I already knew what this meeting was about. Still, I waited, because part of me hoped I was wrong. Clara stepped closer. Her heels clicked softly against the stone path. "Daniel," she said, calling my name like she always had. But something about the way she said it felt colder, more distant. "I've made a decision," she continued. Those 4 words felt heavier than anything else she could have said. I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. "What decision?" I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. "I'm sending you to the countryside." For a moment, I didn't understand. The words didn't make sense. Not together. Not like this. To the countryside. I repeated slowly. She nodded. Yes. To the northern estate. The farm near Willow Creek. I knew that place. Everyone in the family did. It was far from the city. Far from comfort. Far from opportunity. It was where unwanted responsibilities were sent. Where forgotten things stayed. Why? I asked. That single word carried everything I was feeling. Confusion. Fear. Hope. She inhaled slowly, then glanced back toward Ethan before turning to face me again. "Because Ethan needs to take over city operations," she said calmly. "And it wouldn't be appropriate for you to stay here." Not appropriate. Those words cut deeper than anger ever could. "I don't understand," I whispered. Clara finally met my eyes fully. And in that moment, I saw something I had never seen before. Not love. Not kindness. Just resolve. "This is better for everyone," she said. "Everyone." I repeated bitterly. She didn't answer directly. Instead, Ethan stepped forward slightly. His expression remained polite, but there was something smug hidden behind it. "Don't take it personally," he said smoothly. "This is simply business." Business. 7 years of loyalty reduced to business. 7 years of standing beside her, erased with one decision. I ignored him and looked back at Clara. "Is this because of him?" I asked quietly. Silence stretched between us. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. But her silence was louder than any answer. "I've arranged everything," she continued, her tone returning to calm professionalism. "You'll stay at the northern estate. You'll manage the farmland and logistics." Farmland. Logistics. Words that sounded like exile. "You want me gone," I said. Not a question. A realization. She didn't argue. Didn't comfort. Didn't apologize. She simply nodded. Yes. That one word broke something inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like glass cracking deep inside water. I swallowed slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. 7 years, I said softly. Her expression didn't change. I gave you 7 years, I continued. I stood beside you when the company struggled. I stayed when everyone else walked away. Still nothing. No regret. No hesitation. Then she spoke again. You're being emotional. Those words hurt more than the decision itself. Emotional. As if loyalty was weakness. As if devotion was something shameful. I let out a slow breath. What about us? I asked. That question carried the last piece of hope I had left. For the first time. She hesitated. Just slightly. Then her expression hardened again. There is no us anymore. The world felt silent. Heavy. Unreal. Behind her, Ethan smiled faintly, satisfied. Clara reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She handed it toward me. Your travel documents, she said. And instructions. I stared at the envelope but didn't take it immediately. Taking it meant accepting everything. Accepting defeat. Accepting exile. Accepting the end of something I had believed would last forever. But eventually, my hand moved. Slowly. Mechanically. I took the envelope. It felt heavier than it should have. Transportation leaves tonight, she added. You should prepare. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. She wasn't just sending me away. She was removing me. Immediately. Efficiently. Completely. I nodded once. Not because I agreed, but because I understood. There was nothing left to fight for here. Nothing left to protect. Nothing left to believe in. I turned slightly, adjusting my grip on the suitcase. But before I could walk away, I stopped. One last question remained. Clara, I said quietly. She looked at me. Yes. I met her eyes fully, for the last time. If he hadn't come into your life, would this still be happening? For the first time that day, her silence lasted longer than before. Long enough to confirm everything. Long enough to destroy the last piece of hope inside me. I wish you well, she said finally. Not an answer. Just a goodbye disguised as politeness. I nodded once, then turned around, and walked toward the open gate, step by step, without looking back. Because if I looked back, I knew I might stop. And if I stopped, I might beg. And I refused to beg for someone who had already chosen another. Behind me, the gate closed slowly. The heavy metal sound echoed through the empty street. That sound marked the end of my old life. And the beginning of 7 years. Of silence. Of hardship. Of change. Because the man who left that mansion that day would not be the same man who returned. The journey to Willow Creek took nearly 10 hours. By the time the car left the smooth city highways and entered the narrow countryside roads, the sun had already begun to set. The golden light stretched across endless fields, painting the land in soft shades of orange and brown. I sat silently in the back seat, watching the city disappear behind me. Tall buildings turned into small houses. Busy streets turned into empty roads. Noise turned into silence. It felt like my entire life was shrinking with every mile. The driver didn't speak much. He only glanced at me occasionally through the rearview mirror, like he wanted to say something but didn't dare. I didn't blame him. What could anyone say to a man who had just been sent away like unwanted luggage? Finally, the car slowed down. Ahead of us stood an old iron gate, slightly rusted at the edges. Beyond it stretched acres of farmland, wide, quiet, and completely unfamiliar. This is Willow Creek Estate, the driver said. His voice sounded respectful, but distant, like he already knew I didn't belong here. The gate opened slowly, creaking loudly as if protesting my arrival. Inside, I saw wooden fences, long dirt roads, and a large but aging farmhouse sitting at the center of the land. This was my new world. No skyscrapers. No luxury. No Clara. The car stopped near the farmhouse porch. I stepped out slowly, gripping my suitcase. The air felt different here. Cleaner. Colder. Lonelier. A middle-aged man stood waiting near the entrance. He wore simple farm clothes, his hands rough and worn from years of work. "You must be Daniel," he said. His voice was firm but not unfriendly. I nodded once. "Yes." He extended his hand. "Name's Mr. Harris. I manage the farm." I shook his hand. His grip was strong, the kind of grip built through years of labor, not comfort. Long trip? He asked. Long enough, I replied quietly. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded slightly, as if he understood more than I had said. Well, he added, turning toward the house, you'll get used to it. Used to it? I doubted that. Inside the farmhouse, everything felt simple. Wooden floors. Plain furniture. No decorations. No luxury. Just necessity. Mr. Harris showed me a small room upstairs. This will be yours, he said. The room contained a single bed, a small desk, and one window overlooking the fields. Nothing more. Nothing less. I placed my suitcase beside the bed and walked toward the window. Outside, endless farmland stretched toward the horizon. It looked peaceful. But peace wasn't what I felt. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's face again. Her calm expression. Her cold voice. There is no us anymore. Those words echoed endlessly inside my mind. I turned onto my side, staring at the wall. 7 years. 7 years of loyalty erased in a single afternoon. Morning came faster than expected. A loud knock echoed against my door. Up already. Mr. Harris called from outside. I checked the clock. 5:30 a.m. Too early. Too unfamiliar. I opened the door. Breakfast is ready, he said. Work starts after. Work. That word felt strange. Back in the city, my work had involved numbers, meetings, decisions. Here, it meant dirt, sweat, and physical effort. Downstairs, breakfast was simple. Eggs, bread, and coffee. No servants. No luxury trays. Just survival. After eating, Mr. Harris handed me a pair of gloves. You'll start with irrigation, he said. I nodded silently. Outside, the morning air felt sharp against my skin. The fields stretched endlessly in front of me. Rows of crops waiting to be maintained. This wasn't temporary work. This was daily survival. Hours passed slowly. The sun climbed higher, burning against my back. Sweat soaked through my clothes. My hands grew sore. Blisters formed where soft skin once existed. But I didn't complain. Not once. Because pain felt easier than memory. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Time moved quietly in Willow Creek. No parties. No city lights. No late-night calls. Just work. Silence. Routine. Sometimes, at night, I took out the old phone Clara had given me years ago. I stared at the screen. Waiting. Hoping. Expecting one message. Just one. But none came. Not once. Not after the day she sent me away. Eventually, even hope began to fade. Winter arrived harshly. Snow covered the farmland like a thick white blanket. Work didn't stop. Cold winds cut through clothing like knives. Hands cracked. Skin burned. But something strange happened during those months. Pain stopped feeling like punishment. It started feeling like strength. Each day I survived. Each task I completed. Each hardship I endured. I changed. Slowly. Silently. The man who had once stood outside Clara's mansion, weak with love, soft with devotion, began to disappear. In his place, someone stronger emerged. Someone quieter. Someone harder. Years passed. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just steadily. 7 long years. 7 silent years. 7 years without hearing her voice. Without seeing her face. Without knowing whether she ever thought about me again. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, I stood alone near the edge of the fields. The sky glowed orange and red. Wind moved softly through the crops. Mr. Harris walked toward me slowly. You've changed, he said. I glanced at him. Have I? I asked. He nodded. You don't look like the man who arrived here anymore. I didn't respond. Because he was right. The man who arrived here had been broken. Lost. Discarded. But the man standing here now was different. Stronger. Quieter. Unbreakable. As I stared across the endless farmland, one realization settled deep inside my chest. The city had taken everything from me, but the countryside had rebuilt me. And somewhere, deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning of something new. By the time my 3rd year at Willow Creek arrived, the land no longer felt unfamiliar. The early mornings, the long hours, the aching muscles, all of it had become routine. Pain didn't surprise me anymore. Loneliness didn't scare me anymore. Silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt normal. That morning started like every other day. The sun hadn't fully risen yet when I stepped outside, gloves in hand, preparing to begin another long shift in the fields. The sky carried soft shades of grey and blue, promising a quiet but exhausting day. Mr. Harris had left early to deliver supplies to a nearby village, leaving most of the farm work in my hands. I didn't mind. Working alone had become easier than working with others. Less talking, less thinking, less remembering. I walked toward the far edge of the field, where the irrigation pipes had been causing trouble for the past week. The soil there was uneven, and water often leaked through cracks that needed constant repair. Kneeling down, I began tightening the metal joint with a wrench. The cold metal pressed against my palm as I focused on the task. That was when I heard it. A soft sound behind me. Footsteps. Light ones. Unfamiliar. I paused, turning slightly. Standing a few steps away was a young woman I had never seen before. She held a small wooden basket in her hands. Inside it were bottles of water and cloth towels. Her long dark hair moved gently in the morning breeze, and her simple clothes suggested she belonged to the nearby village. But what caught my attention most was her expression. Not curious, not judgmental, just kind. "You shouldn't work without drinking water," she said softly. Her voice sounded calm, warm in a way I hadn't heard in years. I stared at her for a moment, confused. "Who are you?" I asked. She stepped forward carefully. "My name is Emily," she replied. "Mr. Harris asked me to bring you these." She lifted the basket slightly. "He said you forget to take breaks." I frowned slightly. That sounded exactly like something Mr. Harris would say. Without another word, she placed the basket on the ground beside me. "Drink before it gets warm," she added gently. Her tone wasn't commanding, not demanding, just caring. Something unfamiliar tightened inside my chest. I hesitated before picking up one of the water bottles. "Thank you," I said quietly. She smiled. A small smile. But real. Not forced. Not polite. Genuine. "You're welcome," she replied. Then she turned to leave. Simple. No extra conversation. No unnecessary questions. But before she could walk too far, I spoke again. "Wait." She stopped and turned back. "Yes." I hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you live in the village nearby?" She nodded. "Yes. My family owns the small grocery store near the main road." I recognized that place. I had visited it a few times to buy tools and supplies. "You help your family?" I asked. "Every day," she answered. Then, after a short pause, she added, "Just like you help this farm." Her words sounded simple, but something about the way she said them made me feel seen. Not pitted. Not ignored. Seen. That feeling alone made me uncomfortable. Not because it was bad, but because it was unfamiliar. "I should get back," she said gently. "There's more work waiting." I nodded once. "Thank you, Emily." She smiled again before walking away. Her figure grew smaller as she disappeared beyond the wooden fence. For a long moment, I remained kneeling in the dirt, holding the water bottle in my hand. Something about that brief encounter stayed with me. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just noticeable. Days passed quietly after that. Routine returned. Work continued. Life moved forward. Until one afternoon, I saw her again. This time, near the farmhouse. She stood beside Mr. Harris, speaking to him while handing over a stack of papers. When she noticed me approaching, she waved slightly. A simple gesture, but enough to catch my attention. "Daniel," Mr. Harris called. "Come here a second." I walked toward them. "What is it?" I asked. Mr. Harris scratched the back of his neck. Emily's family store handles most of our supply deliveries now, he explained. She'll be stopping by more often. I nodded once. Understood. Emily looked at me briefly, then smiled again. That same warm smile. Hope you've been drinking water properly, she said playfully. A small joke. Light. Harmless. Yet strangely comforting. I have, I replied simply. Over the next few months, her visits became frequent. At first, they were strictly business. Delivering tools. Bringing supplies. Checking orders. But gradually, conversations began. Short ones. Simple ones. About weather. About crops. About daily life. Nothing personal. Nothing deep. Yet somehow, those small conversations began filling the silence that had surrounded my life for years. One evening, after finishing a long day of work, I found her sitting on the farmhouse porch. Alone. Watching the sunset. What are you doing here? I asked. She looked up, slightly startled. Waiting for Mr. Harris, she replied. He went to check the south field. I nodded and sat on the wooden step beside her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We simply watched the sky change colors. Orange. Pink. Purple. Peaceful. You work too hard, she said suddenly. I glanced at her. That's the job. She shook her head slightly. No. That's the habit. Her words caught me off guard. Habit. Not responsibility. Not duty. Habit. You don't rest, she continued quietly. You don't laugh. You don't complain either. I didn't answer. Because she wasn't wrong. You look like someone who forgot how to live, she added softly. That sentence stayed in the air between us. Heavy. Unavoidable. I stared at the fading sunlight, unsure how to respond. After a moment, she spoke again. You don't have to tell me anything, she said gently. But, you don't have to carry everything alone either. Her voice carried no pressure. No judgment. Just quiet understanding. Something inside my chest shifted slightly. Not broken. Not healed. Just moved. For the first time in years, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt shared. And deep inside, I realized something quietly important. Emily wasn't just another person passing through my life. She was becoming something else. Something steady. Something warm. Something dangerous. Because warmth had the power to melt walls I had spent years building. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. But ready or not, my life had already begun to change. By the 4th year at Willow Creek, the farm no longer felt like exile. It felt like routine. Like responsibility. Like life. Every morning began the same way, before sunrise, with the cold air brushing against my skin as I stepped outside. The soil beneath my boots had become familiar, almost comforting. But the biggest change in my life wasn't the land. It was Emily. Her visits had become part of my weekly routine. Sometimes she came to deliver supplies. Sometimes to collect orders. And sometimes just to check if I was still forgetting to drink water. That morning, I saw her walking toward the farmhouse again, carrying 2 bags filled with groceries. You're late, I said casually as she approached. She rolled her eyes playfully. I'm not late. You're early. I smirked slightly, a rare reaction I hadn't shown in years. Mr. Harris noticed it too. From behind us, he chuckled. I haven't seen you smile like that since you arrived here, he said. I ignored his comment, but Emily laughed softly. See? I'm improving your mood, she said proudly. Don't get ahead of yourself, I replied. But deep inside, I knew she was right. She was changing something in me. Slowly. Quietly. Without forcing anything. That afternoon, while organizing tools in the storage shed, I noticed her sitting near the wooden fence, watching the fields. Not working. Not rushing. Just sitting peacefully. It was unusual. You're not helping today, I asked as I walked closer. She shook her head. I finished early at the store. Then why are you here? She hesitated for a moment before answering. I like it here. Her answer caught me off guard. Like what? I asked. The quiet, she replied. The air, the view, the feeling. I followed her gaze across the endless green fields. The wind moved gently through the crops. Birds flew low across the sky. Peaceful. Simple. It's different from the village, she added. I nodded slightly. It's different from the city too. She glanced at me. You lived in the city before, right? I stiffened slightly at her question. Not because I wanted to hide anything, but because thinking about the past still felt uncomfortable. Yes, I answered shortly. She didn't ask more questions. Didn't push. Didn't dig into memories I wasn't ready to share. Instead, she spoke again. You must have had a very different life there. I stared at the horizon quietly. Yes, I said. Different. Not better. Not worse. Just different. Silence settled between us again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It felt natural. Comfortable. After a few moments, she stood up and dusted her hands. Come eat, she said. I brought extra lunch. I frowned slightly. You didn't have to. I know, she replied calmly. I wanted to. Inside the farmhouse kitchen, she placed simple dishes on the table. Rice. Vegetables. Soup. Nothing fancy. But warm. Homemade. Comforting. I sat across from her quietly. For years, meals had been quick and silent. Fuel for work. Nothing more. But today felt different. She watched carefully as I took the first bite. Well, she asked. I paused. It's good, I admitted. Her face lit up instantly. Of course it is, she said proudly. That small reaction, that simple happiness, made something inside my chest feel lighter. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Our conversations became longer. Our silences became easier. And slowly, without noticing when it started, Emily became part of my life. Not as a visitor. Not as a helper. But as someone who belonged. One evening, heavy rain fell across the fields. Thunder echoed loudly across the sky. Inside the farmhouse, the lights flickered slightly as the storm grew stronger. I stepped outside to secure the storage shed doors when I noticed a familiar figure running toward the house. Emily. She held a small umbrella, struggling against the wind. What are you doing here? I shouted as she reached the porch. Delivery, she replied breathlessly. In this weather. She shrugged. Orders don't wait for sunshine. Water dripped from her clothes as she stepped inside. You're soaked, I said. I noticed, she replied dryly. Without thinking, I grabbed a clean towel and handed it to her. Dry off before you catch a cold. She froze for a moment, staring at me. What? I asked. She shook her head slowly. Nothing. But her eyes carried something new. Something warm. Something deeper. Later that night, after the storm calmed, we sat together near the window, watching the rain fade into silence. Daniel, she said softly. Yes. She hesitated before speaking again. Do you ever regret coming here? The question hit deeper than expected. Regret. That word once filled my entire existence. But now, it felt different. I didn't choose to come here, I admitted. She nodded slowly. I know. But, I continued quietly, I don't regret staying. Her eyes widened slightly. Why? I stared out at the dark fields beyond the window. Because this place changed me, I answered. And, because of the people here. She lowered her gaze slightly. And me? She asked softly. Her voice carried uncertainty. Hope. Fear. I turned to look at her. Directly. Honestly. Yes, I said. Her breath caught slightly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. Not wide. Not loud. Just gentle. Peaceful. And in that quiet moment, something important happened. Not dramatic. Not sudden. Just certain. For the first time since being sent away, I realized something deeply unexpected. This place wasn't Exile anymore. It was home. And Emily was becoming part of that home. The day I realized my life had truly changed was the day Emily told me she was pregnant. It happened on a quiet spring morning. The air felt warmer than usual, carrying the soft scent of blooming flowers across the fields. I had just returned from checking the irrigation lines when I saw Emily standing near the farmhouse porch. She wasn't moving. Not working. Just standing there, holding something small in her hands. A folded piece of paper. Her expression looked different. Not sad. Not scared. But nervous. That alone caught my attention. "Emily." I called as I walked closer. She looked up at me slowly. Her eyes met mine, then quickly dropped again. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice sounded softer than usual. That tone made my chest tighten slightly. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, nothing's wrong." But she didn't sound convincing. I stepped onto the porch, standing just a few feet away from her. "What is it?" I asked again. She hesitated for several seconds. Her fingers tightened around the folded paper. Then, slowly, she handed it to me. "Read it," she whispered. I frowned slightly and unfolded the paper. At first, the words didn't register. Medical test results. Dates. Numbers. Symbols. Then, my eyes stopped on one line. Positive. For a moment, the world went completely silent. I read the line again. And again. Just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. "You're," I paused, my voice catching slightly. "Pregnant." She nodded slowly. Her eyes searched my face, waiting for my reaction. Waiting for judgment. Waiting for fear. Waiting for rejection. Instead, something unexpected happened. A strange warmth spread through my chest. Not fear. Not panic. Something deeper. Something unfamiliar. Joy. Pure, quiet joy. "You're going to be a father," she said softly. Those words felt heavier than anything I had ever carried before, but not heavy in a painful way. Heavy in a meaningful way. Like responsibility. Like purpose. Like life. I looked up at her again. She still watched me carefully, uncertain. "Say something," she whispered. I stepped forward slowly. Without thinking, I placed my hand gently over hers. "We are going to have a child," I said quietly. She nodded. A small tear slipped down her cheek. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "That you wouldn't want this," she answered. Her voice trembled slightly. "That you'd think it was too soon, too difficult." I shook my head immediately. No. That single word carried more certainty than anything else I had spoken in years. "This isn't a mistake," I continued. "This is a beginning." Her breath caught slightly. "Really?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yes." And in that moment, I realized something important. The man who once lost everything in the city had found something even greater here. A future. Weeks passed quickly after that. Emily's routine changed slightly as her body adjusted to the pregnancy. She worked less, rested more, and I found myself watching her more carefully than before, making sure she didn't lift heavy items, making sure she ate properly, making sure she stayed safe. One evening, while sitting together on the porch, she leaned gently against my shoulder. "Do you think it will be a boy or a girl?" she asked softly. I smiled slightly. "Healthy," I replied. "That's all that matters." She laughed quietly. "That's a very serious answer." I shrugged slightly. "I've learned to value simple things." She turned her head slightly, resting it more comfortably against me. "You've changed a lot," she said. "I know," I replied. "And I like who you've become," she added. Her words settled quietly inside my chest. Warm. Steady. Peaceful. Months passed. Seasons changed. The farm continued to thrive. And slowly, Emily's belly grew. Each passing week made the future feel more real, more solid, more permanent. Then finally, one cold winter night, everything changed. Heavy snow covered the land when Emily suddenly grabbed my arm tightly. "Daniel," she whispered urgently. Her voice shook slightly. "It's time." My heart skipped once, then began beating faster. I helped her into the truck as quickly as possible, driving carefully through snow-covered roads toward the nearest clinic. Every minute felt longer than the last. Every breath felt heavier. Until finally, after hours of waiting, a sharp cry filled the small hospital room. The sound echoed loudly through the silence. Strong, clear, alive. The nurse stepped toward me moments later, holding a small bundle wrapped in soft cloth. "Congratulations," she said gently. "It's a boy." A boy. My son. I stared at the tiny face staring back at me. Small fingers. Closed eyes. Soft breathing. Fragile. Perfect. Carefully, I took him into my arms. And in that moment, everything changed again. The pain of the past. The memories of betrayal. The loneliness of exile. All of it felt distant now. Because this small child was my future. Not the city. Not Clara. Not the past. This child. This family. This life. And as I held my son for the very first time, one quiet realization settled deep inside my heart. The man who had once been sent away alone would never be alone again. Life after my son's birth became quieter, but fuller. Days were no longer measured by work alone. They were measured by laughter, by tiny footsteps running across wooden floors, by small hands pulling at my sleeve while I worked outside. We named him Lucas. A simple name. Strong. Easy to call. And somehow, perfect for him. Lucas grew quickly. By the time he turned 5, he had already learned how to follow me around the farm like a tiny shadow. Wherever I went, he followed, carrying small tools he barely understood, asking endless questions. "Papa, why does the water go in the ground? Papa, why do plants grow slow? Papa, why do cows make that sound?" His curiosity never stopped. And strangely, neither did my patience. Emily often laughed while watching us together. "You never talked this much before," she teased one evening as Lucas climbed into my lap. "I talk when it matters," I replied. She smiled warmly. "You've changed more than you realize." Maybe she was right. Because the man I had once been, the man who left the city with a broken heart, felt like someone from another lifetime. Someone distant. Someone irrelevant. Or at least, that's what I believed. Until the day everything changed again. It was late afternoon. The sky carried soft golden light, and Lucas was chasing chickens across the yard, laughing loudly as Emily tried to stop him. "Lucas, slow down," she called. But he only laughed harder. I stood near the fence, watching them with quiet contentment. Moments like this felt priceless. Simple. Peaceful. Perfect. Then suddenly, my phone vibrated. The sound felt strange. Unfamiliar. Almost foreign. I rarely received calls. Most people in my life existed within walking distance. For a moment, I ignored it. But when it vibrated again, something inside me stirred. A strange uneasiness. Slowly, I reached into my pocket and pulled it out. The number displayed on the screen made my breath stop. Unknown. But the area code was from the city. From the place I hadn't returned to in 7 years. My chest tightened slightly. Emily noticed my expression immediately. "Daniel," she called gently. "What is it?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stared at the phone, watching it vibrate again. And again. Like the past refusing to stay buried. Finally, I answered. "Hello," I said calmly. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. Dangerously familiar. "Daniel." My hand froze. My heartbeat slowed. Then quickened. That voice was one I hadn't heard in 7 years. One I thought I had forgotten. One I never expected to hear again. Clara. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched heavily between us. "Daniel," she repeated, her voice quieter now. "I've been trying to find you." Her words felt unreal, like echoes from another life. I swallowed slowly, forcing my voice to remain steady. "How did you get this number?" I asked. "My father kept your records," she replied. "I searched for years." Years. That word echoed inside my mind. "You searched for me?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly. Something I had never heard from her before. I waited, she added. I waited for you to come back. Those words felt strange, confusing, meaningless, because waiting meant nothing now. Not after 7 years. Not after everything that had changed. What do you want, Clara? I asked calmly. A long pause followed. Then, I want you to come back. Her words hit like distant thunder. Come back. Back to the city. Back to the past. Back to the place that once destroyed me. I glanced across the yard. Lucas was still laughing. Emily was still chasing him. Their laughter filled the air. Warm. Alive. Real. This was my world now. Not hers. Not the city's. Mine. I'm married, I said quietly. Silence fell on the other end. Heavy. Unbelievable. You're what? She whispered. Married, I repeated. And I have a son. The silence that followed felt endless, like something fragile breaking slowly. Then finally, her voice returned. But this time, it sounded weaker. Broken. Daniel, she whispered. Please. That single word carried something new. Something unfamiliar. Regret. And for the first time in years, the past had finally found its way back into my life. After Clara's call ended, I didn't move for a long time. The phone remained in my hand, but my mind felt somewhere else, trapped between the past I had buried and the present I had built. Daniel. Emily's voice broke through my thoughts. I looked up slowly. She stood a few steps away, Lucas holding her hand. Both of them watched me carefully, sensing something had changed. You look pale, she said softly. Who was on the phone? For a moment, I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hide the truth, but because saying her name out loud again felt strange. Heavy. Uncomfortable. It was Clara, I finally said. Emily's expression shifted slightly. Not shock. Not anger. Just quiet understanding. She had heard that name before, in fragments of my past that I had shared slowly over the years. The woman from the city, she asked gently. I nodded. Yes. Lucas tugged at Emily's hand, unaware of the tension building around him. Papa, look, he said excitedly, holding up a small wooden toy he had made earlier. I forced a small smile. That's good work, I said, ruffling his hair. But inside, my thoughts were far from calm. Emily watched me closely. What did she want? She asked. To come back, I replied. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't react dramatically. Instead, she asked the one question that mattered most. Do you want to? That question hung between us like a test, because the answer wasn't simple. Not anymore. I don't want to go back to the past, I said honestly. But there are things unfinished there. Emily remained silent, listening carefully. She said she searched for me, I continued. For years. Emily lowered her gaze slightly. That must mean she regrets what she did. Maybe, I said. But regret doesn't erase time. Lucas interrupted again, running in circles nearby, laughing loudly. His laughter grounded me, reminded me where I belonged. That night, after Lucas fell asleep, Emily and I sat quietly at the wooden table inside the farmhouse. A small lantern lit the room with warm light. The silence between us wasn't tense, just thoughtful. After several minutes, Emily spoke. You should go. Her words surprised me. I looked at her immediately. Go. I repeated. To the city, she said calmly. Why? I asked. Because unfinished things don't disappear, she replied. They stay inside you. Her words carried quiet wisdom. You don't have to stay there, she continued. But you should face it once. I stared at her silently. You're not afraid? I asked. She shook her head slowly. No. Why not? Her eyes met mine steadily. Because you chose us, she said. Not the past. Those words settled deeply inside me. Strong, unshakable, and true. The next morning, I stood outside near the truck, preparing to leave for the city for the first time in 7 years. The sky looked clear, bright, but my chest felt heavy. Emily walked toward me slowly, Lucas beside her. Lucas held onto my leg tightly. Papa going somewhere? He asked. Yes, I replied gently. For a short trip. Bring candy, he asked seriously. I smiled slightly. I will. Emily stepped closer. You don't have to rush, she said. Take your time. I nodded. Then she added something unexpected. Whatever happens, remember who you are now. Not who I was. Not who Clara remembered. Who I had become. A husband. A father. A man who rebuilt his life from nothing. I opened the truck door slowly. But before stepping inside, I turned back once more. Lucas waved excitedly. Emily smiled softly. That single image stayed in my mind as I started the engine. Because no matter what waited in the city, no matter what Clara said, no matter what memories returned, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same man who had left 7 years ago. And this time, I wasn't going back alone. The city hadn't changed. But I had. Tall glass buildings still reflected sunlight the same way they had 7 years ago. Traffic still filled the streets. People still walked quickly, chasing deadlines and ambitions. Yet as I stepped out of the truck and stood in front of the Lynn family headquarters, everything felt smaller than I remembered. Less intimidating. Less powerful. I adjusted my jacket slightly and walked toward the entrance. The security guard glanced at me briefly, then froze. Recognition flashed across his face. Mr. Daniel? He asked uncertainly. I nodded once. His surprise didn't matter. Nothing here did anymore. Inside the lobby, the marble floors still shined perfectly. Employees moved quickly across the building, whispering to each other as they noticed me. 7 years ago, I would have felt nervous walking through these halls. Now, I felt nothing. Cold calm. Controlled silence. Then, the elevator doors opened, and she stepped out. Clara. For a moment, time seemed to stop. She looked thinner than before. Palest. More tired. Her once perfect confidence looked cracked, fragile. But her eyes, still locked onto mine instantly. Daniel, she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly. Not confident. Not proud. Just emotional. I studied her quietly. 7 years ago, I would have walked toward her without hesitation. Now, I didn't move. She stepped closer slowly, as if afraid I might disappear. I waited, she said softly, for 7 years. Her words hung in the air between us. Heavy, uncomfortable, meaningless. Because while she had waited, I had lived. And deep inside, I already knew. No amount of waiting could bring back the man she once sent away. Clara stood just a few steps away from me, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. For years, I had imagined this moment, thought about what I would say, what I would feel, what I would do. But now that it was happening, I felt nothing close to what I once expected. No anger, no longing, just distance. You really came back, she whispered, her voice barely steady. I said I would, I replied calmly. Her eyes searched my face desperately, as if trying to find the man she once knew. But that man was gone, buried somewhere in the past she created. I waited for you, she said again, her voice shaking more this time. I didn't marry Ethan. That statement was supposed to matter. Once, it would have meant everything. Now, it meant nothing. Why? I asked quietly. The question surprised her. She blinked, unsure how to answer. Because I thought you would return, she admitted. Her voice broke slightly at the end. I thought you would forgive me. Forgive. Such a simple word, yet so meaningless after everything that had happened. You didn't wait for me, I said calmly. You waited for your own comfort. Her breath caught sharply. That's not true, she protested weakly. Then tell me, I continued, my voice steady. Where were you when I spent winters alone in freezing fields? Her lips parted, but no words came out. Where were you when I worked until my hands bled? Still nothing. Where were you when I needed someone? Silence filled the space between us. Heavy, unavoidable. Because the truth was simple. She hadn't been there. Not once. Not ever. And now, it was too late to pretend otherwise. Clara didn't speak after that. She simply stood there, staring at me as if trying to hold on to something that no longer existed. Her silence said everything. Not because she didn't have words, but because none of them could change the past. After a long moment, I took a slow breath. "I didn't come back to stay," I said calmly. Her head lifted slightly. "Then, why did you come?" she asked softly. "To finish what was left unfinished," I replied. "To close the past properly." Her eyes filled with tears. "You really moved on," she whispered. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and showed her the screen. A simple photo. Emily stood beside Lucas in the middle of a wide green field. Lucas laughed as he held Emily's hand, both of them smiling under the bright countryside sun. My family. My present. My future. Clara stared at the picture silently. Her shoulders trembled slightly. "You look happy," she whispered. "I am," I answered honestly. That truth felt lighter than anything else I had carried before. For a moment, neither of us spoke again. Then finally, I stepped back. "This is goodbye, Clara," I said quietly. Not angry. Not bitter. Just final. She didn't try to stop me. Didn't beg. Didn't argue. She simply watched as I turned around and walked toward the exit. Outside, the city noise returned instantly. Cars, voices, movement.